Canto 28, Circle 8, Bolgia 9, The Sowers of Discord. Who could describe, even in words set free of metric and rhyme, 1,000 times retold, the blood and wounds that were now shown to me? At grief so deep the tongue must wag in vain, the language of our sense and memory lacks the vocabulary of such pain. If one could gather all those who have stood through all of time on Pulia's fateful soil and wept for the red running of their blood and the war of the Trojans, and in that long war which left so vast a spoil of golden rings as we find written in Livy who does not err, along with those whose bodies felt the wet and gaping wounds of Robert Guiscard's lances, with all the rest whose bones are gathered yet at Separano, where every last Pugliese turned traitor, and with those from Tagliacozzo, where Alardo won without weapons, if all these were gathered, and one shown his limbs run through, another his lopped off, that could not equal the mutilations of the 9th Pit's crew. A wine tun, when a stave or cant bar starts, does not split open as wide as one I saw split from his chin to the mouth with which man farts. Between his legs, all of his red guts hung with the heart, the lungs, the liver, the gallbladder, and the shriveled sack that passes shit to the bung. I stood and stared at him from the stone shelf. He noticed me and opened his own breast with both hands, cried, "See how I rip myself! See how Mahomet mangled and split open! Ahead of me walks Ali in his tears, his head cleft from the top knot to the chin. And all the other souls that bleed and mourn along this ditch were sowers of scandal and schism. As they tore others apart, so are they torn. Behind us, warden of our mangled horde, the devil who butchers us and sends us marching, waits to renew our wounds with his long sword. When we have made the circuit of the pit, for by the time we stand again before him, all the wounds he gave us last have knit. But who are you that gawk down from that sill, probably to put off your own descent to the pit you are sentenced to for your own evil? Death has not come for him. Guilt does not drive his soul to torment, my sweet guide replied, that he may experience all while yet alive. I, who am dead, must lead him through the drear and darkened halls of hell, from round to round, and this is true, as my own standing here. More than 100 wraiths, who were marching under the sill on which we stood, paused at his words and stared at me, forgetting pain in wonder. And if you do indeed return to see the sun again, and soon, tell Fra Dolcino, unless he longs to come and march with me, he would do well to check his groceries before the winter drives him from the hills and gives the victory to Novarese. Mahomet, 1 foot raised, had paused to say these words to me. When he had finished speaking, he stretched it out and down and moved away. Another, he had his throat slit and his nose slashed off as far as the eyebrows, and a wound where one of his ears had been, standing with those who stared at me in wonder from the pit, opened the grinning wound of his red gullet as if it were a mouth, and said through it, O soul unfortified to misery, and whom, unless I take you for another, I have seen above in our sweet Italy, if ever again you see the gentle plain that slopes down from Vercelli to Maracaibo, remember Pier da Medicina in pain, and announce this warning to the noblest two of Fano, Messrs. Guido and Angiolello, that unless our foresight sees what is not true, they shall be thrown from their ships into the sea and drowned in the raging tides near La Cotalica, to satisfy a tyrant's treachery. Neptune never saw so gross a crime in all the seas from Cyprus to Majorca, not even in pirate raids, nor the Argive time. The one-eyed traitor, lord of the Demesne, whose hill and streams one who walks here beside me will wish eternally he had never seen, will call them to a parley, but behind sweet invitations he will work it so they need not pray against Forcara's win. And I, to him, if you would have me bear your name to time, show me the one who found the site of that land so harsh, and let me hear his story in his name. He touched the cheek of one nearby, forcing the jaws apart, and said, This is the one. He cannot speak. This outcast settled Caesar's doubts that day beside the Rubicon by telling him, A man prepared is a man hurt by delay. Ah, how wretched Curio seemed to me, with a bloody stump in his throat in place of a tongue which once had dared to speak so recklessly. And one among them, with both arms hacked through, cried out, raising his stumps on the foul air while the blood debauched his face, Remember too, Mosca de Lamberti, alas, who said, A thing done has an end, and with those words planted the fields of war with Tuscan dead, and brought about the death of all your clan, I said, and he, stung by the new pain on pain, ran off, and in his grief he seemed a madman. I stayed to watch those broken instruments, and I saw a thing so strange I should not dare to mention it without more evidence, but that my own clear conscience strengthens me, that good companion that upholds man within the armor of his purity. I saw it there. I seemed to see it still, a body without a head, that moved along like all the others that spew and spill. It held the severed head by its own hair, swinging it like a lantern in its hand. And the head looked at us and wept in its despair. It made itself a lamp of its own head, and they were two in one and one in two. How this can be, he knows who so commanded. And when it stood directly under us, it raised the head at arm's length toward our bridge, the better to be heard, and swaying thus it cried, O living soul in this abyss, see what a sentence has been passed upon me, and search all hell for one to equal this. When you return to the world, remember me. I am Bertrand de Born, and it was I